What is up, bros and broettes? I'm Inkslasher, and today we are going to be talking about Weekend 2 of the Black Ops 4 multiplayer beta. As of yesterday, Treyarch put out a live stream talking about all of the changes that they've made to the beta since Weekend 1. And they actually, just tonight as I'm making this video, and I think it's 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, put out a full list of everything that is actually going to be changing. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the tons of things that they have changed, because they've made adjustments to specialist characters, Scorestreaks, weapons, you name it, it has changed. So we're going to be talking about all of that in today's video. So in yesterday's live stream, one of the big things that they said to us is that they were really enjoying all of the constructive criticism that people were giving them, because literally everything that almost everyone complained about, they touched or adjusted in one way or another, which is absolutely amazing to see. It's awesome to see that in any beta. And they also said the reason that they were able to do this is because unlike any other beta they've put out before, they were actually getting analytics and data in real time as people were playing the game. It's something that's new. I believe it either happened starting this year or the year before, where when people are playing the game, they can literally get real-time data about weapons they're using, different score streaks, you name it, they have data on it, and they can immediately change it when it's in beta. So throughout last weekend, they were making some adjustments, and now we have a million new things added in this weekend. So I just finished recording and editing this video, and I didn't realize how much was in this update for Black Ops 4. So this video is very long, but what I'm going to do is leave timestamps down in the descriptions to the different parts of the patch. So if you want to check out something individual, check that out down in the description. But sorry for the long video, but I included all the information, so I hope you enjoy all the new things in the game. And speaking of new things, before we talk about the changes, we're now going to talk about the two new things coming to the beta this weekend, one of which is a game mode, the other is a new map. So the new map is called Hacienda. I think I said that right, but basically what this map is it looks like a vineyard. And in the live stream, they really didn't give us much information about this map, but all we know is that this map will be going live in the beta on Saturday. It won't be available today, so stay tuned tomorrow. We may talk about that map a little bit then. But as of right now, what we have is the little bit of gameplay they actually showed us from this map. As you can see, the colors are really bright and vibrant on this map, which of course, just like any Treyarch game, they always try to do, but I think in this game is really amplified to the next extent, and I really like seeing that in this map as well. So the next big thing that they're adding to the beta this weekend is a new game mode called Heist. It is something we have never before seen in Call of Duty and is completely different. And I saw a lot of people were really confused about this game mode, but it's actually quite simple once someone actually explains it properly. So first of all, this game mode, if you're going to compare it to another game mode in Call of Duty, is closest to Search and Destroy. Each player has one life. Once they're dead for that round. However, this game mode plays a little bit more like Counter-Strike, because in Heist, you do not create a class. In Heist, every time you kill someone, play an objective, revive one of your teammates, which we'll talk about in a second, you actually get money, and before every round, you can buy new weapons, perks, abilities, and everything in between. So instead of create a class, you have a system similar to Counter-Strike, where when you kill people or do objectives, you get money and can buy better stuff for the next round. On top of that, as I mentioned, each round you only get one life, and when an enemy kills you, you actually drop to the ground, kind of like in Fortnite or PUBG, and then can be revived by a teammate. In fact, they said that this idea for the game mode was actually inspired by Blackout because of being downed by enemies and that kind of thing, which I kind of believe, but at the same time, I also definitely believe that this is very heavily inspired by Counter-Strike because of the weapon buying system and everything like that at the beginning of every round. So the one thing that's different between Heist and Search and Destroy is the actual objective itself. Instead of being a bomb you're planting somewhere, it's actually a bag of money. Now, this bag of money will be placed in the center of the map, and both teams will go and try to retrieve it. And once a team retrieves it, they try to take it to the extraction zone, which is a helicopter with a rope that you kind of tie it to like you would in the drop zone in The Division if you've ever played that. So instead of planting bombs, you're going to grab money and bring it to a helicopter. Each team is going for the same bag of money. Now, the one thing that they didn't quite explain well is whether or not the helicopter is going to go to the same extraction zone every round, whether it's going to be random where it goes, or if it's different every round. They didn't really explain that, but we'll have to find that out later today once the beta is actually officially live, because Heist should be available on the Friday that the beta goes live. In other words, today. So later today, I'll make a video talking about the intricacies of Heist, how the purchasing system works, what I think of the game mode. That'll all come later today. today. But as of right now, all we really know is that this is a new game mode that should be going live today. Now, as far as things that they've changed from weekend 1 to weekend 2 of the beta, almost everything I made complaining about the game, they have fixed. It's actually quite insane how much they fixed in just a week. But the first things that they fixed, the big, most important things, is any sort of freezes, crashes, frame drops, anything like that caused by any of the maps, performance issues, they've tried to tweak, tried to fix, and should be a little bit better this weekend. The second thing is the lobby timer. The lobby timer, I believe, was 2 minutes last weekend. They were reducing that to 70 seconds. They also said that that's also longer than they want it to be at the launch of the game. They are just really trying to fine-tune the new lobby loading system. And if you don't know what that is, basically the next match actually loads up in the menu. When you are creating your class and that kind of thing, the next match is actually loading then, instead of just loading on a black screen, which is a really brilliant idea and should be fully fleshed out, as they said, by the time the actual game is released. The beta is just helping them fine-tune that. That's why the lobby times are still a little bit longer at 70 seconds than they wanted them to be. The next thing is when you take damage in Black Ops 4, your screen kind of flashes black and darkens, makes it hard for you to aim. They've reduced this greatly. This was something a lot of people complained about, and we'll have to see how reducing it really affects this. Hopefully it's good enough where people aren't too bothered by it. Another thing that they've also adjusted is the spawn logic for Domination. A lot of people were complaining about how quick spawns flip, or you'd be spawning right behind an enemy. So apparently they've adjusted this and already have seen some data that the spawns have been improved, so we'll have to see how that works this weekend. Now we get into the good stuff. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is body armor. This is something that I said I wanted just to get straight up removed from the game, but they've done some other things, and some things that I think are really interesting and might actually fix the body armor problem. So the main thing that they changed is, instead of just adding a bullet of damage to the person using it, they made it so that the body armor only blocks a percentage of the damage coming in, not the full amount of damage like it did before. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work, and unfortunately, since it's in beta, I'm not going to actually be able to test this in a custom game, but it should just make it so it doesn't block as much damage. However, I really don't know how this is going to work. I still feel like it's going to feel similar to how it was, but we're really going to have to wait and see. But the other big change is that if you kill a player wearing body armor, you also get plus 25 score. So your team is actually rewarded when someone on the other team is wearing body armor by an extra 25 score per kill, which is a really interesting way of dealing with this. I still think it would be better just to simply remove the body armor, but this is a really interesting fix. I'm interested to see how this actually affects the meta of the game. Next up, we have the COMSEC Device. This is the device that basically makes its score streaks cheaper, and all they did to buff this is actually make it so score streaks are even cheaper when using this. The reason why I think they did this is because Stim Shot was used by so many people, they wanted to kind of add incentive to using some of the other pieces of equipment as well. Speaking of Stim Shot, they actually made an entire change to the healing system as a whole. Basically, what they did is, once you stab yourself with the needle, it now takes a shorter amount of time to get to the full 150 health, but after you stab yourself with the needle, the recharge time on re-stabbing yourself with the needle is a little bit longer, both with Stim Shot and without now. And then the final piece of equipment that they touched here is the equipment charge. This is the perk that allows you to kind of charge all of your specialist gear faster. Basically, what they did is this will now allow all your equipment to charge even faster than it did in weekend 1. Once again, making this a little bit better, making it more competitive with Stim Shot. Next up, we've got perks. So the first perk we got here is Dead Silence. Basically, the change that they made to this is now Dead Silence is a little bit more effective against Acoustic Sensor. Basically, what Acoustic Sensor does is allows you to hear enemy footsteps better, and now Dead Silence is a little bit better because the range of the Acoustic Sensor is a little bit less than it was before against Dead Silence players. Next up, Flak Jacket, reduced explosive damage protection, so this should make explosives a little bit better against players using Flak Jacket, so a little bit of a nerf there. Also, Cold-Blooded, this one's interesting. Reduced the delay that AI will take before recognizing a cold-blooded player by a little over 50%. You'll need to take cover a bit more quickly when enemy AI are roaming. Basically, what this means to me is that even if you're using cold-blooded, AI score streaks are still going to be able to kill you, but they will take a little bit longer to target you than if you are not using cold-blooded. What this means to me is that cold-blooded is next to useless, and really you should use another perk instead of it. Next up, we've got Dexterity, and this one got a little bit of a nerf. First of all, you have increased hip spread while mantling, and on top of that, it reduced the duration of the slide. Speaking of which, another thing that they kind of nerfed going into Weekend 2 is the movement. They now have a reduced default jump height. On top of that, every subsequent jump that you make is now reduced in height, so you can't be bunny hopping all over the place. Also, they reduced the default slide speed and distance. So they're nerfing both the jumping and the slide. So movement should now be a little bit slower. Personally, I think this is a little bit too much of a nerf. I think simply the downscaling of the subsequent jumps would have been enough to nerf it, but apparently they wanted just to nerf the movement all around. So we'll have to see how that one plays out this weekend. The next perk we got, though, is Ghost, and this one now has decreased time that you are protected by Ghost after stopping moving. So this Ghost works like many Ghosts we've seen before. If you are not moving, you show up on the radar. If you are moving, you are not. Now you have to be moving that much more, because if you stop, you're pretty much going to show up on that UAV. Next up, Tactical Mask reduced the amount of resistance to 9-bang, concussions, reactor core, and fire, so that got quite a large nerf. And finally, Tracker increased the durations that footsteps remain in the world. So I'm kind of interested to see how Tracker plays now, because I don't think a lot of people were using that perk, but now that it kind of works a little bit better, it might be a better perk. The next thing that they made a big change to is equipment, both specialist equipment and your just everyday regular grenades. Now, the reason why they did this is they made every piece of equipment better, but made it so that it takes longer for them to recharge. And the reason why they did this is because they basically wanted each use of equipment to be more impactful, but also take longer to actually achieve. So the first thing is the combat axe. They lowered the cooldown. Now you can use it a little bit more often. I think they did this simply because it's a kind of worse piece of equipment, so now you can use it more often. All other pieces of equipment are longer in the cooldown section across the board, literally every single one of them. The frag grenade, they made a little bit better. They increased the inner and outer blast range damage to match the cluster grenade. So now the frag grenade should be pretty much just as good as the cluster grenade, minus the actual cluster. Next up, one that I didn't think needed to be buffed is the 9-bang. They increased the stun radius and decreased the fire delay from it. And then finally, the tac deployment. Now this one's interesting because this is one a lot of people had a lot of things to say about. And I think for the most part, the things that they changed on this one are good, but the things they did is they reduced the positivity influence of the tac deployment so players will have safer spawns. Basically, what this does is this turns on more spawn points around that area, so you can actually spawn further from the tac deployment, and you're not just spawning in a circular radius around it. On top of that, they reduced the amount of time that the tac deployment is active to 25 seconds, and finally, you can only spawn 10 times on the same tac deployment. You may notice that there is no difference with search and destroy, so the tac deployment is still going to allow Seraph to respawn once in search and destroy. And then finally, reactor core, they increased the damage and distance, so now reactor core should be a little bit better. So not only did they make a change to all these pieces of equipment, but they also made a change to 6 different specialist characters. The first of which is Ajax. Ajax uses the ballistic shield, and they thought that this was underperforming, so what they're actually going to do is when you are using the riot shield, you are now able to move faster in all situations. Next up, we have Ruin. Basically, Ruin got a little bit of a nerf. His Grav Slam now takes more time to actually charge up. This is good. I think it was a little too spammy. People were getting way too many kills with it, and it really didn't play a part into the team play that they're really trying to push in this game, so I think that's why they've kind of changed Ruin. Fire Break, as we mentioned earlier, his reactor core does more damage and in a larger radius, but they also gave the Purifier a little bit of a buff. Now there is more fuel. In other words, the Purifier lasts a little bit longer than it did in Weekend 1. Next up, Torque, a character which I thought was going to get a nerf on some of his abilities, actually got a buffed. His Barricade not only lasts longer, but on top of that, the microwave that it sends out deals more damage to the enemy team. So all around, this is a huge buff for Torque. I think he's going to be that much better of a character. Next up, we have Prophet's Tempest. This one I think didn't get quite enough of a buff, but what they did is they took it, they reduced the cooldown of it so you can earn it faster. On top of that, they made the movement speed and aim down sights faster with it. The good thing about this is the weapon is better as a whole. The problem is that the weapon doesn't actually kill people when you shoot them with it. It just knocks them down and doesn't quite kill them. I think it would just be better if you shot someone with the gun, you killed them right away, just like the Purifier from Black Ops 3. But hey, that's just me. Maybe you disagree with me. And then finally, Nomad, they gave a little bit of a nerf to his puppy. The main thing that they did is they slowed down the run speed on him, but they also kind of settled down the glitches as well, including him not flying anymore. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, this is kind of what I'm talking about.
Enemy located. Go!
So next up, we have Scorestreaks, and Scorestreaks kind of got buffed across the board to a huge extent, and basically everything above a care package got a buff. Starting off with Lightning Strike. So they both buffed the damage and radius of the explosives from the Lightning Strike, and also Tablet will now sweep for enemy positions in the fog of war when first used. So you'll kind of have a better idea of where to actually aim with this thing. Also, the Hellstorm missile, the cluster bomb lock-on radius is increased, so you can lock on at a larger range. Next up, Sentry Gun. The health is increased and can be placed while sprinting. I still think the Sentry is going to be a little bit underpowered, but that's just me. Next up, Strafe Run. They both improved the pathing on the straight run, but also reduced the overall cost, which is a good thing, so it'll be easier to get now. Next up, the Strike Team. Once again, they decreased the cost of it. After that, they also increased the weapon accuracy of the Strike Team, the behavior update, so it now seeks out enemies more quickly, and finally, increased health per squad member. That is a huge buff, and I think these are going to be much better now. The gunship cost is reduced. I'm not sure of these exact numbers yet, but we'll of course see today once the beta is actually released. Then we got the Mantis with another absolutely huge buff. You have a health increase, a damage increase, a movement speed increase, and finally behavioral changes to seek out enemies more quickly. Once again, a massive buff for the Mantis. And then Helicopter, it has a behavioral change to seek out enemies more quickly. These are amazing buffs. Now the Scorestreaks might actually be devastating like they said they were going to be, but all in all, the Scorestreaks, I think they're going to be very good now. Some of them, like the Strike Team and Mantis, might be a little bit actually overpowered now. We'll have to wait and see. And then we have our weapon changes, and this one was interesting to me because basically the main thing that they did is nerf all of the SMGs and buff everything else. There was a couple SMGs that they improved, as we're going to find out here, but for the most part, that was kind of the route they took with this. So we're going to go through each weapon. I'm going to go through them as quickly as possible, but keep in mind, there is a lot of these weapons that they changed. So the first one, the GKS. This was the only SMG to get an absolutely massive buff. It now has better recoil, better hip spread, its highest damage, so in other words, short range damage is longer, and you get extra ammo with it. That's a huge buff, but really the GKS needed it. It was by far the worst SMG. Next up, the Crawdite. This one has increased weapon recoil, but with extended mags, you get an extra few bullets. After that, the Spitfire. This one has increased weapon recoil, reduced ammo, but you have a better reload speed, and fast mags reload faster. And on top of that, with extended mags, you get more bullets. Next up, the MX-9. This is a weapon a lot of people thought was overpowered, now has increased weapon recoil. So all around, it sounds like the SMGs are going to be a little bit harder to control, at least the ones that are already good from weekend 1. Next up, our first assault rifle here, we have the ICR-7. This one has a faster aim down sight speed, and you move faster both while aiming down sights and aiming down sights while shooting. So overall, an movement improvement and an aim down sights improvement for the ICR. The Rampart 17 also got the exact same buff, an improvement to the aim down sights time and movement speed while aiming down sights, which was kind of surprising because I already thought the Rampart 17 was pretty good. The next one, a little bit interesting, is the Maddox RFB. This is one of the weapons we actually couldn't unlock last weekend, but I guess they gave it a buff. So they improved the aim down sights time and movement speed while aiming down sights, just like the previous 2 weapons, and on top of that, the movement speed with the stock attachment. So it's odd that they gave that one a buff, but I guess they saw how the assault rifles behaved in weekend 1 and thought this one needed a buff too. The KN57 gets a similar buff, once again, aim down sights time and movement speed while aiming down sights and stock movement speed. But it also got a high damage range increase. In other words, that short range damage, the highest amount of damage, that range is better. So this weapon should be that much better up close and personal. Also, the Vapor XKG got the exact same buff as the KN57. The only difference is its bayonet got a nerf. This range of it was slightly reduced. Next up, the Titan, the one LMG that we can use in this game, got a pretty big buff. It has better hipfire accuracy, better movement while aiming down sights, and better movement while aiming down sights with stock. So all in all, a very similar buff to the assault rifles that we talked about earlier. Next up, shotguns, both of which got a buff. So the MOG 12 has its one-hit kill range extended just a little bit, and then the SG 12 has a extended mags buffed, and now you get a little bit more bullets with that. Next up, the rocket launcher, the Hellion Salvo. I'm sure I'm butchering that name, but this one basically just has faster aim down sights time. Next up, the tactical rifle, the ABR-223. By the way, guys, this weapon is going to be the best weapon this weekend. If you just want a great class, use this one with the operator mod. It is going to be the best weekend, at least for the Friday, because they didn't nerf it at all. In fact, they gave it a little bit of a buff. If you're using extended mags with it, you're going to have increased bullets in this weapon. So if you want a good weapon, this is the one you want to use. Next up, the sniper rifles. There was a rumor that these were going to get quite the nerf, but really, as far as these patch notes go, they didn't. Just a couple of attachments for the Koshka. First of all, you have a slower aim down sights time with Quick Draw 1 and Quick Draw 2, and on top of that, with the Speed Center, you have increased precision aim and crosshair size. Not 100% sure what that means, but that's what the notes say. And then finally, the Paladin HB50. Basically, they just fixed a little bit of a bug where the right arm dealt more damage than the left arm for some reason. I don't know why, but that is all of the patch notes, guys. I know this video took a long time. This is much longer than my normal video, but I wanted to show you everything that they changed. As I mentioned, it's an absolute crazy amount, but it took me a long time to read through all of these, make sense of them all. I'm going to leave a link to all of the patch notes down in the description of the video, so if you want to check that out, it's down there. But I think almost everything that they changed was good for the game, but if you disagree or don't like some of the changes, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Also, I would really appreciate it if you could hit that like button. This video took me forever to render, edit, do all that stuff because it's such a long video, so a like would be very greatly appreciated. Also, if you like what you see here, you like being updated on all the Black Ops 4 content, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on all my videos. But guys, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace out.
We are reaching for the stars, but we're making